Hello, and welcome to American Heron Wargaming. This is a battle report for Warhammer The Old World. This game was so close to my previous battle report that I hadn't made significant changes to my list, just some tweaks. I was still using the Expeditionary force from the Dwarven mountain holds. I had a Dwarf Engineer as my general with a handgun, engraved with the Rune of Luck, Rune of Rapid Fire, and Rune of Accuracy. He was also an Expeditionary marksman. I had 2 Dwarf Engineer sappers, both with handguns, one of them with the enchanted rune, Rune of Rapid Fire and Rune of Accuracy, and the other one with the Rune of Rapid Fire and the Rune of Concussive Force for the Stupidity gun. Then I had a runesmith in full plate armor with 2 runes of spell breaking, and a Thane battle standard bearer with a Master Rune of Stromny Redbeard on their banner, 2 runes of stone, a rune of shielding, a rune of passage, the Master Rune of Swiftness, and a rune of might. I had a dwarf cart with some beer in it, 17 dwarf warriors with full command, and a rune of speed on the veteran's axe. The standard bearer had the rune of battle, which combined with the rune of Stromny Redbeard gave me 4 extra combat resolution. They were also drilled veterans. Then I had 13 rangers with shields, great weapons, crossbows, and throwing axes, and an old Deadeye as well. Then I had 3 Scout Gyrocopters, 2 in core and 1 in special. Then I had 14 Thunderers with a veteran and a musician. They were all Expeditionary marksmen as well. Then I had 3 cannons, all with function over form so that they could move and shoot. One had the rune of reloading, another one had the rune of reloading and a stalwart rune for extra combat res, and the last one had the stalwart rune and the rune of forging. And finally I had 5 miners with blasting charges, the prospector had a steam drill, and a musician. I was playing against Bretonnians for the first time ever, and this time I actually had my opponent's full list. They had a duke as their general, with the virtue of heroism, riding a royal Pegasus with a Gromrel great helm. They had a paladin, who was on foot, with a knight's vow, the virtue of empathy, who was their battle standard bearer, with a banner of iron resolve and the biting blade. There were 2 prophetesses. There were 2 prophetesses. One was a level 4 wizard with battle magic and the prayer icon of Quinels. The other one was on a warhorse and was a level 3 with elementalism. Then they had 32 men-at-arms with full command, 2 groups of 6 mounted knights of the realm, one with a war banner and full command, 2 groups of 3 Pegasus Knights with a knight's vow and full command, and finally 6 Grail Knights with full command and the rampaging banner. This was a standard pitch battle with no fancy secondaries or anything like that. I tried out something slightly different from my usual deployment approach. I set up my Thunderers to move up onto a hill so I could fire with them in 2 ranks, and had my cannons go down at ground level. I've always been nervous about blocking their shots, but these cannons can move, so my thought was that if they needed to move in order to get an angle, that was actually possible for them. The Rangers were set up in open order with an engineer sapper in the middle, ready to dig them in before the Bretonnian Knights would come crash again. In this photo, I did accidentally crop out a cannon and a Scout Gyrocopter that were holding down my right flank. My opponent's deployment put the Pegasus Knights on the wings, followed next by a layer of other knights. The Duke took up a middle position, and the men-at-arms block was left of center. With all that said, we kicked things off, and I got the first turn. I pushed up the Thunderers and the Gyrocopters, and with everything shooting, I ended up getting 1 Pegasus Knight, 1 Grail Knight, and 1 Knight of the Realm. Due to the angles and everything, I wasn't able to concentrate fire just as much as I would have liked to. It turned out that I had pushed my Scout Gyrocopters up just a little bit too far. I moved them into just under 12 inches from the knights so that I wouldn't take the long range penalty for shooting. When they got charged, I fired and fled, dealing no casualties. However, those fast knights were able to catch up and fleeing is fleeing, so they ended up getting run down. So I lost all 3 of my Gyrocopters in 1 charge phase, and now the Brets were coming at me. I poured my Rangers, my good engineering rune guns, and my cannons into the Duke, and he lived with a single wound left. I'd also managed to take out some of the Ground Knights with my Thunderers, but it wouldn't be enough. As my opponent's turn 2 came around, they declared 6 charges into my lines across the field. The Thunderers' stand and shoot went surprisingly well, taking out all the Grail Knights and leaving just the Prophetess on her own. However, all the charges landed. I'd put the other Engineer Sapper in the combat brick this time to see if it'd help them, since the Thunderers tend to crumble when charged regardless of whether or not they have the Sapper. Only 2 of the Rangers fell in combat with the Knights of the Realm, and took 1 with them. However, I rolled a very unfortunate break test, so the entire remainder of the unit broke and was cut down. The Duke also cleared away the cannon easily, but didn't get far enough on his overrun to get off the board, giving me a chance to try to shoot him before he could turn around. The Thunderers defied all expectations and held fast against a double charge. The combat brick also successfully routed the Knights which charged them. The Sappers' dig-in certainly helped in that regard. The single remaining cannon and the engineer tried their damnedest, but the Duke's layered saves kept that single wound from slipping away. In the combat phase of my turn, the Thunderers lost and popped through my combat brick, leaving them in the clear while the Warriors got to deal with the Pegasus Knights. In my opponent's turn, the men-at-arms brick collided with my Warriors as well. However, thanks to some fantastic saves, I only lost 3 warriors to 3 men-at-arms and the foot prophetess, allowing me to win the combat on combat resolution and push them back. The Duke handily cleared away the final cannon, and the Engineer and the Thunderers were suddenly facing down a Duke, Pegasus Knights on both sides, and nearly another full wedge of Knights of the Realm. I was not feeling particularly hopeful about the outcome at this point. I put the pony cart in the way of one group of Pegasus Knights to act as a speed bump at least, and wheeled the Thunderers around. Since they're expeditionary marksmen, this meant they were still shooting without penalty. But it all came down to this. Could my poor, lonely general deal a single wound to a Bretonnian Duke flying at him on a battle Pegasus? He cocked the intricate mechanism on his custom handgun, took aim and fired, and got a hit through. The Duke was down. The Thunderers also managed to get some good work in, peeling off 2 of the Knights of the Realm, and the combat warrior block managed not only to win combat, but to also catch the fleeing men-at-arms and run them down. I'd also brought my miners in to maybe get a flank or rear charge in the next turn, but it turned out that wasn't going to be necessary. The Knights of the Realm charged my general to try to avenge the Duke, but the plucky engineer sniped one of them down on the way in, and miraculously defeated the other one in combat. The miners were cleared away by one side of the Pegasus Knights, but the pony cart managed to fortunately survive its encounter with them, at which point my opponent conceded. I was of the opinion that 5 Grail Knights could still cut a swath through my remaining forces, but that was going to require some luck, and in this game, Lady Luck seemed to be favoring me more instead of them. So, despite a few misplays, I walked out of this one with a win. I was pretty pleased with keeping the Engineer Sapper with the Warriors instead of the Thunderers, but I do still think it's good to have my cannons on the hills for better visibility. I'm also trying very hard not to let this game raise my level of expectation for my general's handgunning abilities, since I think this was about the best I could ever hope for. But who knows, maybe he'll continue to surprise me in the future. That's all for now, but keep your axe handy.